Okay, everybody, thanks so much for bearing with me, and I'm back on here now and able to have my camera on. So we are going to call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Maintenance and Development Committee. My name is Jesse Letterman. I'm the chairman of the committee, and I'm joined by my colleague and member of the committee, Ward 1 Councilor Maria Perez. We are also joined by, I think, Councilor Tim Allen is with us, and a number of individuals representing both the public and employees at the library. We also have the director of DPW, Chris Signoli, with us, and I'll give everybody a quick chance to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump into the conversation for the day, which is a discussion of the redesign of the Lower State Street corridor. I know this is an issue that is near and dear to many. It's been an issue that has been discussed really for more than a decade in this area, and one that is very important to myself and colleagues on the council relative to increasing pedestrian safety in the area, both for neighborhood residents, library patrons, and employees. After we hear Chris's presentation, we're going to have a chance for councilors to ask him some questions, and then we will open it up for public comment and questions from the public, and then we'll move towards adjournment and next steps. So when I call your name, if you could just briefly introduce yourself, and we'll start with Betsy Johnson.
Betsy Johnson, current president of the Armory Quadrangle Civic Association, which includes the area of concern, as well as major volunteer with Walk Bike Springfield, who are residents working to improve the safety of bicycling and walking in Springfield.
Thanks, Betsy. And we have Jessica Wimett.
I'm Jessica Wimett with Council 93 AFSCME, and I'm representing the Springfield Library and the employees.
Thank you for being here. Liz and Mike Stevens.
Liz Stevens. I'm with the McKnight Neighborhood Council and with Walk Bike Springfield. And my friend Mike, he can introduce himself.
I'm Mike Stevens, and also with Walk Bike Springfield, and I am a retired employee of the city library. Wonderful.
And once occasional childcare providers of a much younger Councilor Letterman.
Yes.
I see we have a deputy director of the Springfield Libraries, Jean. Jean, you want to introduce yourself? Jean Canosa-Albano.
Thank you, Councilor. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jean Canosa-Albano and the deputy director of Springfield City Library and city resident.
Thanks, Jean. Jean once gave a much younger Councilor Letterman his first job stacking books at the Mason Square Library. Carol?
Yeah, Carol Costa. I live on State Street. This has been a concern for a long time. And actually, Jesse, not 1 decade, but 2 decades it has been a concern. So it goes back a really long time.
Thank you, Carol. And Linda O'Connell.
Hello, thank you. I apologize for not being on camera. I'm not feeling well and I'm not fit for public consumption. I am the vice president of the Armory Quadrangle Civic Association and live in the classical condos right across from the library and see that crossing happening daily and do share all the concerns that others bring to this table.
Thank you. And I also want to recognize Paul Tuttle from WAMC is here. So Chris, at this time, we'll turn it over to you to present the options you're considering, and the floor is yours.
Okay, councilors, just want to make sure I got something here. Okay, all set. As we talked about, I don't know, a month and a half ago or so, what we have settled on is the option that I have shown on the screen here, where we will be keeping the curb lines in place at this time and widening the roadway from the center, narrowing the roadway from the center and creating a refuge island in the middle. What our next step is that inside of most likely within 2 weeks, we will be placing out cones, barrels, barricades to mimic the layout that is out there, that is proposed to go out there. The crosswalk where it is will not be active. All we are trying to do at this point is mimic the traffic situation so that when we start to look at the area and actually finish the formal design, need to know what we need to tweak for traffic. The sidewalks there and the grade do not allow for a crosswalk to be put in temporarily. So really what we're trying to do at this point is see what's going to happen with the traffic. We are going to, as I said, probably 2 or 3 days before we put the stuff out there, we will have variable message signs in both directions, alerting people that there will be a change in traffic plan. And when it is in place, we expect to have it in place anywhere between 45 and 60 days. And when we have it in place for the 45 or 60 days, we'll be able to get an idea of what's going to happen out there with regard to traffic. And as I said, then we'll be able to adjust the design accordingly to make sure we're not creating some major traffic problems. But basically, when you come into the area, you will be narrowed down to 1 lane in the area of the library and the proposed crossing. And then as you then approach the other intersections, both east and west, it widens back out to the 4 lanes to accommodate turning lanes onto whether you're at the school and I'm drawing a blank on the street, but you school and when you get to Chestnut and to Dwight Street as well. So the layout we have shown there. And what I hope to do is when we put the variable message signs out, we will also put out a press release. And when the press release goes out, obviously to alert citizens that we'll have this in place. So when it's in place, as I said, we hope to have it in for 45 or 60 days, see what happens, adjust the design accordingly, and then be able to finish the design and then getting constructed as quickly as possible after that. We were looking at 2 different options. One of them was kind of narrowing from the curb line in, and that was just going to be way too problematic with regard to grading, drainage. We were going to have to modify catch basins and a lot of drain lines were going to have to be relocated. So this was going to make life a lot easier. And it also creates a refuge island in the middle. So from a traffic perspective and a safety perspective, I think it will be much safer for the pedestrian. So that is our plan at this point.
Chris, can you expand this out anymore? Or maybe zoom in a little bit and
Absolutely.
give us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And give us some perspective here on where everything is. So where is the crosswalk in comparison to the parking lot?
The driveway, and if everybody can see my cursor, the area that I'm circling right here is the front steps to the library. Going a little bit farther to the east, this is the driveway that is along the side of the library. On the opposite side of the street, this is the driveway that goes into the parking area. So we are 45 to 55 feet to the east of that, where we will have the pedestrian crossing. And you kind of see a stop bar here, a stop bar here. In the plan, when we move forward with the full design, there will be a hawk system here. So when somebody hits the button, it will turn red. So there will be a stop bar here. Cars will queue up in the eastbound direction, and as well as queuing up in the westbound direction as well. We are looking at the design so that a person can cross the road, hit the signal again, and then only one side needs to be stopped at a time as well. And so that the people have an area in the center that will be a refuge. So you're 45 to 55 feet to the east of the big driveway, adjacent to the classical condominiums, and maybe 40 feet or so from the driveway where vehicles come out of the library. And as I said last time, vehicles that access the library here also have it for deliveries, et cetera. So those vehicles that come out, have to make this turn as well, and they have to make this turn in both directions. So we know that we wanted to make sure we kept that in place as well.
Thank you.
May I ask a follow-up question? On the bus stop, is the bus stop being moved at all?
The bus stop is not, the two bus stops down to the west are the ones you're talking about, Carol, closer to Chestnut?
I'm actually the one on the
You're talking the one closer to School
south
Street?
side.
Closer to School Street?
Yeah, no, the one across from the library. The bus would be going up State Street.
Yeah, that bus stop is basically right here.
Correct.
And that is staying. And that is one of the reasons why we needed to keep 2 lanes at that point. So
Yeah.
as the buses stop, vehicles can go around it.
Okay, yep,
And be able to go through the roadway. So that bus
Yep.
stop is staying.
okay.
Because we know there's a huge number of people there as well.
Thank you, Carol and Chris. At this time, Chris, do you have anything more to add?
No, at this point, other than just from a timing standpoint, as I said, our financing is getting in place in the next couple of days. And then it's just a matter of being able to coordinate with the contractor to get out there with assistance from the police.
What's the anticipated funding source for the whole project?
Actually, it's one of 2 things. I'm either using Chapter 90 money. At this point, the work that we're doing now is probably only about $15,000 to $18,000. The long-term thing, excuse me, the long-term is actually, I'm looking at 2 sources. The first source was basically going to be either free cash or some bonding money from the city. However, we're working separately with Mass DOT on a number of situations like this around the city. So we might be getting some money directly from Mass DOT. So we got those 2 sources, and that's for the long-term final build on that. So not that I'm not worried about that at this point, but I know I have the backstop of the city funds that the mayor had committed to.
What's the $15,000 to $18,000?
That's just going to be for the 60-day setup for having everything out in the field. All the
Okay.
cones, barrels, barricades, all that good stuff. So
And what's the
that's-
anticipated cost on the full construction?
haven't gotten to that point yet. I'm going to guess that it's probably $350,000 to $400,000.
And that includes the Hawk.
Yes, yes. Without and that not that we were really trying to save money on it, but if we were going to be doing bump outs of the curbing and all that, that was going to be much more expensive. And this will be able to be done a lot quicker as well.
What approvals, if any, do you need to move forward with final construction?
The only thing that I need to do at this point, I need to do coordination through Mass DOT and get their approval based upon having a traffic control agreement for the corridor. So once I have the layout and we go through that, we've already been in touch with Mass DOT, so I'm not really worried about that. We just have to make an amendment to the traffic control agreement. May not even need to make an amendment, just need to make a notification to Mass DOT of the modification that we're seeking for the area. We have kind of on a complete separate thing. We're working with Mass DOT on a number of areas around the city like this. So I've been working with them, just kind of giving them the background on this. So they have this, we're kind of calling it like a complete streets, a complete streets project type of thing. So we may be running it through that program for the funding, and then just a notification to Mass DOT on the modification of the traffic control agreement. Or I think this will, rather than a modification, would be an addition. So I've already had conversations with them.
Do you need any vote of the city council other than, you might need a financial vote if you're getting free cash or if you're doing?
Yeah, if it's either free, for the work itself, no, I don't need to go to the city council other than if there ends up being a financial issue.
Right. Okay. All right. And when do you anticipate beginning the actual construction of the permanent? Change?
I want everything to be 100% in place prior to school opening.
So before.
Yeah,
September
and
1.
it's in this, the only problem that I'm seeing at this point is we're kind of delayed on the Wilbraham Road crossing. And the problem that we're running into is the traffic control equipment has a massive lead time. So I think the construction would be done, but we probably wouldn't have the Hawk system in for that. But so that, we would then have to really figure out what we want to do for a pedestrian crossing there without a Hawk, whether we allow it or don't. But that's why one of the reasons we want to see how it behaves with the just doing the modification of traffic. But once we get the contractor on board so that he can get the material ordered.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think if you have it constructed and there's no Hawk, I'd be concerned with folks.
Yeah,
with folks, wanting to utilize it, but not having that additional piece. So what's the likelihood that the Hawk would be held up? What's the lead?
That stuff usually takes anywhere between 3 to 5 months anyways. So what I want to do is in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, be able to get in the queue, get that ordered, because that's kind of the design piece that they're working on. And it's really a mini traffic signal traffic signal controller, excuse me. So we got to get the design piece on that finished. And then we got to figure out the electrical and things like that. So it's usually a 3 to 5 months lead time. So I want to have all the construction complete, but my guess is that the Hawk system probably won't be in place until later in the fall.
Okay. All right. So at this time, let's open it up for Councilor Perez and Councilor Allen, and then we'll go to our other guests. Councilor Perez or Councilor Allen,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any questions? Councilor Perez, go ahead.
I just want to say this is in the making. I recall taking my children to the library and crossing that street and just making a cross before I cross it. It's like someone said, it has taken decades to have this. I'm great about it. But a lot of concerns. We had the climate justice and Betsy and Linda over 2 Saturdays ago, and crossing that street, oh my God, it's like all the way up. It's like praying that you're not hit by the car. So Chris, I give you thanks and the team for the efforts that you are taking to bring this project across. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Perez. Tim, anything?
Yes, thanks, Jesse. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris, 2 things. One is what is the connection between the temporary project and the permanent project? Is one, if the temporary project goes well, as you watch it and stuff, does it prove that the permanent solution is going to be a good one? Or just if you could draw that connection for me, it would help.
The major issue that I'm concerned about in this area of narrowing the roadway is that I want to see how traffic behavior changes, number one, and number two is that are we simply by the layout, forget the Hawk system for a second, but simply by the layout, are we creating, I don't want to use the word traffic nightmare. I don't want to overstep overstep that, but are we creating a problem that we aren't anticipating so that we can accommodate it in there? And do we need to then make timing changes at the other signal? And really where we're going with it is that then do we need to, simply by the lane narrowing, you know, do we need to make changes at the east and west intersections there to really accommodate all the vehicles? Because what I do not want to have happen is, you know, traffic backing up in an eastbound, and then the light changes and you got everybody jockeying for position, trying to get in the middle of an intersection. So that's really what we're trying to figure out, is that does the design need to then be branched out a little bit more, and what's the impact going to be of it?
So there is a kind of a prove it to me on the short, on the temporary.
I'm trying to see, in general, I'm trying to see how bad it's going to be, and then what we need to change at the other intersections, if anything. You know, and that's why we're doing it for, you know, 45 to 60 days, because I'm going to guarantee the first 3, 4, 5 days are going to be an absolute mess out there. And that happens anytime that there's a traffic change on something like that. And then as people get used to it, it calms down. And so we kind of look at the, you know, the 3, 4, 5 week period to really get an idea on behavior.
So as people proceed down State Street, past School Street, Spring Street, right after then is when will they start to be affected by, you know, 2 lanes going into 1?
Basically right before, if you're going westbound, right before Elliott Street, and as you're going eastbound, as you go through the Chestnut Street intersection.
Okay, all right. And in between, it'll just be 1 lane of traffic.
Yeah, merging into 1 lane, yep.
So obviously, it's gonna back up a little bit above, and that's what you're trying to figure out with the temporary.
Yes, yep.
Okay, that's my questions for now. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. Let's go to our other guests that are here, members of the public and the libraries. We'll start with Jean Canosa Albano, and then we'll go to Carol Costa. Jean.
Thank you, Counselor. Thanks for this presentation. There are a lot of terms being used that I'm not that familiar with. I've been hearing hawk for quite a few years now, and my understanding is there's something about it's raised and there's a beacon on it. It can be controlled by the pedestrian. If I'm way off, please correct me. Also understanding a map. This is not my expertise either, but I think that the cross would be the crossing place for pedestrians would be what looks something like a tire tread.
Yes.
Tire marks.
Yes.
In the middle there. Thank you, Director.
Yep.
And again, spatial relations, not my forte, but I'm looking at what's outlined in red on this picture up and to the left of that crossing area. That's the driveway that goes the one-way, but two-way traffic, 1 lane, 2-way traffic driveway that is between the Central Library and St. Michael's Cathedral.
Correct.
That's right. Okay. To my amateur eyes, it looks so close to where the crosswalk is, knowing that it's fairly well used. And yeah, it's usually a car or a large pickup truck, but it's also used by tractor trailers when they're delivering or picking up exhibits from the museums. I'm just thinking about the turnaround that type of vehicle would need to exit and enter safely.
And that's part of the design, is that if a vehicle is coming out of here and they need to make this turn to the eastbound direction, that they can make it around that corner, which is one of the reasons why it's just pushed up a little bit. And being able to make the turn to go westbound would basically be as it is now. So that's one of the reasons why it is where it is. And if we were to move it, 2 reasons. Number one, if we move it closer to Chestnut, we have to get it far enough away from that driveway. And if you go in this direction, the traffic backs up under normal conditions in front of the library during peak times anyway. So we wanted to make sure we were far enough away from that.
Okay. And just a couple of other questions, if I may, and please bear with me, Carol, I appreciate it. So the area that's that funny shape in the middle there that has the angled lines through it,
Yes.
is that raised at all, or how is it demarcated so it's not part of the road?
What I think what we may do initially is that it may just be painted and hatched. However, we're also thinking about we can do the same thing, keep it at grade, but have it almost be like a stamped concrete that really delineates it. And it would also have some paint on it as well. But we want to be able to delineate it. It would not be a raised curb. Excuse me. Yeah, in that area, it wouldn't be a raised curb, but we're thinking about making it, like a concrete area. And just kind of in a comparison standpoint, on Boston Road, near where you are at Pasco Road, we kind of have an island in the middle that's something like that. You can drive over it, you can cross over it. However, most people don't want to do it. So it creates a little bit of a delineation. So it's not a barrier per se, but it still makes a very good delineation. I haven't figured that out yet because we got to look at, utilities and manhole covers and things like that. And, I'm not worried about the cost side of it, just kind of worried about the impact of it. But we've kind of been bantering back and forth which one we like.
Okay. And if I may, just a couple more. How will this monitoring and assessing go when you are testing out the behaviors? Is that going to be done by cameras? Will there be humans there? Is there something else that would be happening in those 45 to 60 days? I think I heard that you'd be assessing how people are making their adjustments and to see if you need to make an adjustment to the plan.
Actually, it'll be done both. We have cameras that cover this area. So what we are able to do is we have data from it. So on a daily basis, we can look at it live. We can look at it during peak hours. And at the same time, we're going to have people out there monitoring it as well. So it's kind of that threefold way that we're able to gather the data and seeing how people behave.
Okay. And you said it might be a little while to be when it first starts. Will we get a notification? We and other neighbors get a notification so we can inform staff, hey, this is going to be happening starting Monday or whenever it would be.
Yeah, what I was hoping is that, for example, if the contractor was going to start doing his work or, his temporary work on a Monday, that probably like the Wednesday or Thursday before citywide, we would be doing a press release and there'd probably be an article or two. And at that same time, I can do a blast to, everybody who's been involved with all these meetings, neighborhood groups, people like yourself as well, for a notification of it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just one other item. When you were asking before about a hawk system, and I know sometimes I take for granted what I deal with on a daily basis. A hawk system is basically a green, yellow, red traffic signal that would be on State Street that during normal condition, it's off. When a pedestrian is getting ready to cross, they hit the button, the light lights up, flashes yellow, and then flashes red so that the vehicles on the street then come to a stop. The pedestrian then can cross the street. And in the center island, we will definitely have a second button there in there as well. So, and it would be a kind of a standard mast arm where you see kind of a black pole on the side and it comes across over the road. There, for those of you who, and probably it's out there and you may never see it, is just west of Hayden Street on State Street up by the Indian Motorcycle Buildings. There is one there. There's a parking lot for the apartments that's across the street.
Mhm.
And about a little bit over a year and a half ago, that hawk was activated, excuse me. But it's one of those things when you drive by every day, when it's not active, you probably don't even notice it, but you see it over the road. So if you happen to be out in the next week or so up in that area, it is just the eastbound, I shouldn't say just eastbound, it's east and westbound on State Street at that point.
Thank you.
For the clarification, Chris. Thank you, Jean. We're going to go to Carol, and then we're going to go to Linda O'Connell.
Yeah, Chris, I happen to think you really hit the sweet spot in terms of the location of that crosswalk. Anything too much farther up State Street sort of defeats the purpose of going across to the library. It gets farther and farther away. And watching people cross for years, any crosswalk that is too close to those driveways is very dangerous. I mean, in fact, the last fatality when Gail was killed, it was a car zooming out of the State Street lot, immediately making the right turn, and she was right there. So anything very close to the two driveways, the one from the State Street lot and the one adjacent to the library, you just can't be too close to that. So in my humble opinion, I think you really hit the sweet spot in terms of the crossing. But my question now is ingress and egress from the State Street lot, which is a library museum lot.
Yep.
And also the classical lot.
Right here.
Now, I'm assuming that you're not going to be wanting people to fly out of those lots and turn left down State Street. That you would, I mean, frankly, I mean, this may not make me popular for saying this, but I have always thought, and particularly since, you know, at Classical, we have a back entrance, but people can always go around the corner. They can access the State Street lot coming up State Street, and then they can turn right and go around the corner or go out our back lot down Temple and down State Street. But so are you suggesting that traffic should not be entering the State Street lot going south, not south? Is it south?
West.
No, going down
Going
State
west.
Street.
Yep.
Going down State Street should not be making a left turn into the lot there, and should not be making a left onto State Street from the lot.
I actually think one of the reasons why we have it like this is that they can make it. And I actually think that the turn in and out of there, while if we're talking left-hand turns in both directions, you know, depending upon either one of the driveways coming out, I actually think it will be a little safer in the future. Because, for example, if you're coming out of I'm going to call it the Classical condo lot, and you want to make a left, right now, you sometimes have very, very difficult vision looking up the hill, being able to see cars that are in the right lane and left lane. Now you will only have to see cars that are in one lane that would be coming through here. So you'd be able to see this traffic a lot better. But that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at as far as this temporary stuff as well.
People coming down State Street, if their intention is to turn into that State Street lot, let's say they're stopped at that crosswalk.
And that's the thing, they'd be able to pull into the center area a little bit. They're out of the traffic.
But then what? Then cars behind them go crazy if they pull in and then take a left turn. I don't know.
That's kind of why we widened that out real quick there. Yeah, we wanted to make sure, because And again, I know it's like if you're coming in that direction, you would then have to go School Street and cut down, go down School and then kind of loop your whole way around to do it. And I know that, I'm not trying to create more of a problem. So that's one of the monitoring things that we'll be doing as well.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think it's that big a deal if we get out via Temple Street, because then we would just take a right and a left.
Mhm.
But
Thank you, Carol.
yeah,
We'll go to Linda and then Betsy.
Thank you for your presentation, Chris. I am sorry if I've missed this, but I am wondering why not raise the actual
mhm.
crosswalk itself,
Yes.
not that whole area that you've put apart. But I'm wondering why the decision was to keep the whole thing at grade and not do a slight raise for the pedestrian safety zone.
The crosswalk itself, when we do the full design, will be raised.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And, we're not going to, it's something that right now we didn't want to mimic. I didn't want to create a bigger traffic problem. I'm more interested in just the flow of traffic there and the more of the merging and what that's going to do. But the actual crosswalk, when we put it in, will be raised.
Great. Well, thank you. And you've just segued to my second question, and that is about monitoring the traffic flow.
Mhm.
What kind of criteria will you use to determine whether there is a problem? And then how the problem, what are the problems that you anticipate that you will be looking for and how you will assess them? If that's not too technical and crazy question, I just love some concept of how you will be approaching looking at behavior and deciding whether or not it is a problem.
And when I say behavior, when you're on a roadway that is used to being 2 lanes and you have to merge into 1 lane, when I say the word behavior, I'm talking about in a good way and a bad way. If you're driving parallel with a car, you're in the right lane and somebody's in your left, is that car going to speed up to get in front of you, or is it going to fall back, or are you going to fall back? That's the sort of merging behavior that I'm interested in, number 1.
Mhm.
And number 2, I'm interested to see during peak periods, how far back does, are you creating such a bottleneck that you're going to be backing traffic up to an intersection? So those are the 2 major things that I'm really looking at that we would need to incorporate, into a final design.
And if I might just one follow-up, if you are backing traffic up into an intersection, what would solutions be?
One of the things that we then have to do is we have to start looking at the timing and detection in those intersections. And just as an example, let's say traffic backed up into the Chestnut Street intersection. We would then most likely have to do a modification of the traffic signal timing to make sure that that signal would not turn green for the Chestnut Street section until that cleared out. So we would then get into some visual detection as well as in-pavement detection. We have throughout the city, I hate to use the word cameras because they look like cameras, but they don't record. But basically looking at a lot of these intersections, we use video detection. So if we're using video there and we see cars sitting in the intersection, we would then be able to program it to make sure that that signal wouldn't change. Now, what we would then do is say, okay, cars approaching that intersection on State Street coming eastbound, they get a red light. And then basically then that intersection would stay red in all directions until those cars cleared out. Then the Chestnut Street could clear out. And we would have that same instance of looking at it at the School Street intersection as well.
Great. Well, thank you. I think what you're saying is this is both an art and a science, and I appreciate you for
Thank you.
undertaking it.
Thank you, Linda. Betsy?
So I guess, as I've looked at State Street, I mean, there are two things. This is both so pedestrians can have, help the pedestrians get across. But I don't think it's enough addressing the overall issue that cars go up and down State Street too quickly. So part of this design needs to also look at what additional signage in terms of speed detection, even total speed, permanent speed detection radar, radar detection signs, as well as warning of pedestrian crossings, of warning that this is a, thick is a heavy pedestrian area. There's just, this graphic needs to also include where many more signs are going to occur. The second issue is I would really like the narrowing going westbound or down the hill to really maybe even think about, does it begin sooner after school spring? So that by the time you get to Elliott Street, you really are already in one lane.
Mhm.
And really knowing that this is a single lane area. And then actually beyond this narrowing, once you get after Dwight Street, there is really only one through lane of State Street going all the way to Columbus. So why don't we begin to really look at figuring out how after this intersection, you have one through lane and one turning lane. Because, we also had a kid killed at Dwight and Maple because the road was already, not bringing cars down to sort of thinking we got one lane that you're using to go through and one lane that's maybe the one to turn left. I would really like to put this in a larger context is my dream. Because I don't think it solves enough of the state, the State Street killing zone with just this. And in the perfect world, I agree with Carol that it's very dangerous for trucks, especially coming out of the museum library parking lot, being able to do a left turn, or cars coming out of the classical lot doing a left turn. But I agree. I also know how vehemently other folks at Classical don't want to ever really open up the Tremont Street gate. So I think, we're going to have to, if we can really look at ways to, maybe that's another sign that as you're coming down, you're warned that there may be vehicles making left turns out of these out of these, out of these driveways, or there may, and similarly, cars coming, going up State Street, it's the easiest way, eastbound, to really be told, there may be cars making left turns out of these, out of this driveway, or just even the warning they're active driveways, or there's just a lot of room for some additional signage. So those are just my two. But I really sort of like to look at sort of the whole from Spring School, look at how cars in a cars doing a through, how really there could just be one through lane all the way down to Columbus. Because, from Main Street on, there's only one lane. And actually between Dwight and Main, there's really only one through lane. There's two turning lanes. So why don't we look at how we could have that pattern the whole way?
Betsy, I
through
want to,
the whole area? Because especially when you've got, you're going to have 44 new residents at 195.
Yeah.
40, you're going to have 45 new apartments there, and you've got a comparable number of new apartments at 310 State Street. So you're going to have a lot more residents living right there.
Betsy, I want to split your two questions up because I appreciate both of them, and I want Chris to be able to answer. Chris, could you maybe first speak to, because it's maybe a simpler answer, the signage piece? Because actually what I was also thinking of was the Indian motorcycle crossing, and you're exactly right. Sometimes when I'm approaching that crossing, I almost am nervous because you can miss it. And so because I do drive in that area a lot, because I live over here, I'm always hyper aware when I'm driving through there if there is somebody that might have not hit the button or something like that. But what type of signage is planned for this area to really make it very apparent that A, there is going to be merging into one lane, and B, how are we going to be doing speed detection and that sort of thing?
There, in approaching the area in both directions, there's going to be a ton of signage. Number one, lane merging, notification, pedestrian warning. The tip. I don't want to say the typical pedestrian warning stuff, but a lot of warning for the crossing area, notification for driveways, etc. Excuse me. There's going to be a ton of that. And going back to Betsy's kind of first question about moving the narrowing a little bit farther eastbound on the westbound direction, that's one of the things that I'm really interested with the layout that we have here. If we don't see it backing up far enough or backing up and then impacting an intersection, then yeah, we can start moving that the narrowing back a little bit, because I do agree that if we can get it happening before you get to Elliott Street in that direction, it will make it a little better. And we do have some room there to make it much more gradual, for lack of a better term. So we're trying to hit that as well. But the one thing, when the full stuff is built, I think even during lower peak periods where you have less vehicles on the road, where maybe cars will speed a little bit more, we still have the raised crosswalk. So people approaching that area, if they want to speed through there and hit that raised crosswalk, God bless them. I think they'll do it once. But my goal on the raised crosswalk is that it is, it's not a speed bump. It is the walkway itself, the crosswalk is probably going to be 8 to 10 feet wide. So it's going to be much more of a table than it is a bump. So vehicles hitting that at probably anything over 30 miles an hour are going to start to lose pieces. So I think just the inherent fact of what we're doing there and having a raised crosswalk is definitely going to slow the vehicles down. And when I say off peak, I mean, obviously during certain periods when there's a lot of cars, people still speed. But, when you're talking about the 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night where there's not as much traffic and people could go up and down that hill at, 50, 55 miles an hour.
A car at 6:20 this morning was coming down like that.
Yeah. And those are the
when
ones
I
that
crossed the street this morning at 6:20.
Yeah, and those are the ones that make me a little nervous. But I think just having the inherent raised crosswalk is gonna contain a lot of that.
Okay, so and we can look more closely at the signage before the final.
And that's all going to be standard engineering.
And Chris, you addressed the possible additional narrowing closer to spring school. What about Betsy's question on headed down? Because she's correct, of course, between East Columbus and Maine, it's one lane with some turning off into the casino. But then we'll have the two open stretches now between Main and Dwight, and then Dwight and Chestnut. What are your thoughts there?
Actually, as somebody who travels that a lot myself, that area, number one, I think needs a lot more signage for directional purpose, because what happens a lot there is the right lane, once you get past Dwight, is supposed to be, when you get closer to Main, is supposed to be right-hand turn only. But what happens there, a lot of people in the right lane just keep going and then they go straight, and we have little bottlenecks at the corner there. That the layout of that was adjusted slightly as part of the MGM casino, because there is a lot more left-hand turns there now than there was in the past. Even though that there's also a lot more through traffic because a lot of people are taking that MGM way into the parking garage off of State Street down there. But there is also a pretty good left-hand turn. So the only issue that I would have is that I think the turn that would go away would be the right-hand turn onto Main Street. And I actually, people who take that right-hand turn there, most of the time take it illegally, because I think I may be wrong that that's a no turn on red, but people take it all the time. So I think what my preference would be is that there would be a better stacking distance for a left-hand turn, and turning that straight movement, and also with a right-hand turn of narrowing that area. Now, completely separate from this project, there is the work that is going on associated with the Elm Street building project, which is looking at Main Street in that area, that intersection, the intersection of Bruce Landon Way, Court Street, Main Street, along Court Street in that area. So we were actually talking about that sort of stuff at that intersection, because one of the things that's also being discussed is when you're on Main Street in front of the Mass Mutual Center, you have a very big, wide expanse of pavement there that the right lane is basically just used for buses, but you do have a lot of people kind of zipping down that right lane as well. So that's, I don't want to say it's not part of this, because it really isn't, but it's being looked at as the traffic improvements that we're looking at as part of the a separate project associated with the Elm Street building project.
And
I want to say too that I think the other way to think about this is relative to the efforts to sort of develop the economic center beyond the intersection of Main and State, right? I mean, we've done a whole overlay district to try to make that block across from the casino more attractive for business. I think that also includes the block going up State Street that way. And if we want folks to be walking throughout downtown, you have to calm the traffic in those areas and make it more walkable.
And is there still the consultant also looking at a future ability to have the two-way Chestnut go all the way to State, and what would potentially change at that Chestnut State Maple intersection?
Yeah, that's still ongoing on the table. The last one that I saw, the consultant, they were doing their work through Department of Economic Development, was that they weren't planning on bringing the two-way all the way to State Street.
Yes, they said that, but then they said they would also continue to look at how they could do it.
Yeah, and I think the issue that they were looking at there, it's still being looked at, and the last one had it stopping Harrison.
Yes.
Maybe, yes. I think it was at Harrison.
Right. And that doesn't help the museum.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem, is that once you either have to stop it there or you have to go all the way, because there's nothing.
And we want it to go all the way. So that's why I want to keep that on the table.
Right. And the other item that I was talking about with the Elm Street building, at the same time, the design is ongoing right now for the new Mass Mutual Center parking garage that is looking at kind of melding off, when I say off-site from the parking garage, because they are very interested in the Bruce Landon Way, Court Street, Main Street in front of the Mass Mutual Center as well, and that includes the State and Main intersection. So we kind of have two different projects kind of trying to figure out what we want to do there, you know, and I mean, we've even thrown around ideas like at the Elm Street location, at the Court Street, Bruce Landon Way, creating raised table intersections there, creating more,
They're
I
describing
want
it
to use
as-
like a pedestrian corridor for the Bruce
Right.
Landon Way.
Yeah,
and for
Bruce,
Court
they're
Street, so at
describing it
times
as
you can
making
just
Bruce
stop and
Landon-
do that.
They're describing making Bruce Landon Way like Yawkey
Yeah,
Way by
and-
Fenway.
We're also thinking about doing that for Court Street as well, but not the idea that it's closed all the time. During major events, you know, Jazz and Roots and other events that are going on, that you can close these down with minimal effort and not have to deal with, you know, I always want to say the typical BS of dealing with just putting a bunch of people standing in a roadway.
Mhm. All right, so let's do a quick time check here. We're coming up on 6 o'clock. I know Carol has another comment. I want to go to Carol. I know she's been working on this for many years, so we'll go to Carol for our final public
Well,
comment question, and then we'll
Yeah,
move to the
Chris,
next.
it
Carol,
is
go ahead.
beyond, Chris, I just don't understand why we have never explored having rumble strips across State Street as you go higher up the hill as a speed deterrent. I mean, you know, if rumble strips were made wide enough, people start coming down the street at, you know, a fast speed, that immediately, you know, just sort of shocks you into slowing down. And it would seem that we should have maybe some flashing lights around that area of, you know, where the armory is,
Mhm,
alerting people
mhm.
to slowed traffic ahead. Can you comment on the rumble strips?
To tell you the truth, it's something I've never looked at. And I know on rumble strips, horizontal in the roadway, I got to look at standards on that.
Yeah.
I see it a lot on private property. For any of you who have ever been to Mohegan Sun, they have them there.
They've done it in
it-
Boston, coming out
Yeah.
at right onto Huntington Avenue,
Yeah,
out of the turnpike onto Huntington Avenue. They put them there to have people realize you're no longer on the highway.
Right.
and
That's one place they
the
do.
only deterrent in the roadway is winter. They get packed with snow and ice and
Well-
become a little slippery, but that's, you know, it's
I mean, they're on the
tomato,
highway.
tomato.
So, but and another point, at the corner of State and Spring, and on the other side it's School,
Yep.
there are people who make U-turns there all the
Mhm.
time.
Yep.
Can we have a sign prohibiting U-turns?
Yeah, I can take a look at that. Yeah, that's not a problem.
Mhm.
Because I
And then
do
I
see
just
that, I
want-
do
and then-
see that a
and-
lot, yes.
Yeah, and then I just want to finish up. I appreciate what Betsy said about slowing the traffic. We just have to slow it down farther up the hill. But also what she said about traffic pulling out of that State Street lot and taking a left turn. It really is problematic. And I understand that there are people in opposition, but you know, we all have had to endure little inconveniences with one-way streets and all sorts of things over time. And I think in the, for the goal of overall public safety, that's really something we should look at.
Mhm.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you everybody for taking time to be here this evening. I know that this is a long time coming. And I'm certainly glad to see, Chris, your department moving forward with it, and appreciate the opportunity for the council to continue to work with you on it. I think what probably makes sense for next steps is, let's do the temporary piece, and maybe have a meeting at the end of the 60 days. Chris, you and I can collaborate on that date.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, address some of those other pieces that Betsy and Carol had mentioned, and be able to head into final construction. Chris, did you have anything further? Otherwise, we'll work on that date and make sure the funding is in place.
No, other than that, I am all set, and I appreciate everybody's A, patience, and B, input.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, everybody. Well, thank you again. And Counselor Perez, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And with that,
Aye.
we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.